Yeah, I'm Brigadier General Aite from the Kofi Anan International Peacekeeping Training Center in Accra, Ghana. I'm the Deputy Commandant at that center. And then now to your question about the challenges in peacekeeping. As I mentioned earlier, I am a practitioner. Most of the time I've been on the ground in field operations. And there's a clear difference between what is happening. During my brief, I talked about the political and strategic activities as against what is happening on the ground. And as I mentioned, there are clear differences between what is happening at the political and strategic level to what is happening on the ground. And basically, the issue has been about the cutting of budgets, where because of a tightening of budgets, it's very difficult to execute mandates that are coined at the strategic level in New York and brought to be implemented in the field at the operational level on the ground. You see that there are clear differences between what is being taught at the higher level and what can realistically happen at the operational level because of the cuts in budgets, as well as sometimes unrealistic mandates that are brought within the context of the constraints on the ground in order to be executed.
Okay, another question is how do you, as a force, if I can say it that way, as a force, engage with local populations? How do they receive the presence of foreign soldiers, for example? Does it make them more hostile, or does it make them inclined to, for example, join armed groups, or voilà, how do you engage with this population?
I think it depends on the kind of mission and the kind of public relations that is done before a mission goes in and whilst a mission is in. But generally, you would see that in all peacekeeping missions, especially in Africa, without these peacekeeping missions, probably the situations would have gotten worse. And then even within a country, you could get differences in the way the peacekeepers are received in one part of a country and how they are received in another part of a country. But generally, I would say that civilian populations receive the UN well, especially because they know that the basic aim of peacekeepers when they come in is protect civilians. But usually when there's a difference between what the mission says they can do and what they do on the ground, then sometimes you have hostility between the local population and the peacekeepers.
And what are the risks that can stem from that?
Oh, there are risks to both sides. Risk to the peacekeeper, risk to the local population itself. So if a peacekeeper is there and you cannot do your job, then you should know that the defense of yourself is in danger as well as your UN equipment and installations. And for the local population, if you don't have the trust in the people who have come to protect you, then it becomes difficult for them to protect you. And then you have the spoilers taking advantage of the situation to then harass more the local population who are already vulnerable.
Okay, another question is about what are the needs, for example, of the because yesterday you talked about like the clash or when a contingent goes on the ground for a mission, you can maybe encounter soldiers from the host country who are doing things like attacking civilians and stuff, and you can't really. How can you, for example, respond? How can you act in such a situation? And do international peacekeeping missions need more liberty, kind of more freedom? Should they be given more power, for example, of intervention?
Yesterday, my intervention on that issue was about the difficulty in protecting civilians, which is the new mantra that the United Nations has brought up, protection of civilians. And I'm talking about, I started by saying that at a higher level, some of these policies sound good, but when you are trying to practice them on the ground, there is always a difficulty. So I was giving examples of a situation where you know that you have the task of protection of civilians, but you don't have the resources to do that and do that well. I mentioned about how it brings differences between you and the civilian population, how it brings differences between you and the local forces, because as you know, the primary people to provide protection of civilians for their own people is a country that has invited you in. But when they can't do that, or when they are not doing it and you go in to do it, you should have the resources in order to be able to do it. And you shouldn't worry about who that person who is trying to prevent or who is trying to harm the civilian. But in certain cases, you would not have the resources at the UN to do it and do it effectively, and that is a bother to UN peacekeepers.
Mr. Brigadier General, I think these were my questions, so thank you for your time.